Lesson 6, we are going to continue on with sentence parts. In Lesson 5, we looked at subjects and predicates. And now we're going to take a look at another sentence part that's very essential to complete the meaning of a sentence. The next sentence part we're going to take a look at is called complements. Now, complements are those sentence parts that complete the meaning started by the subject and the verb. Let me illustrate. We have a verb, repaired. We have a subject, John. John repaired, well, John repaired what? The subject and the verb need additional parts to complete the meaning started. So, John repaired the tire. The tire is a complement. It completes the meaning started by the subject, John, and the verb repaired. Let's look at another example. Mary set what? Mary set the table. The table is the completer. It completes the meaning begun by the subject and its verb. Let's take a look at another one. Those verbs are action verbs. Let's take a look at the linking verb. Tony. Tony was. Tony was what? Tony was the captain. The captain completes the meaning started by the subject and its verb. So we're going to take a look at completers or complements. And there are 5 types of complements. Now, the type of complement will depend upon the type of verb. We have our action verbs. We have our linking verbs. Let's just label those. Action verb, action verb, linking verb. The kind of complement that follows the action verb, that follows the linking verb, will depend on what that verb is. So we're going to take a look at the 5 complements. The first complements that we want to take a look at, and just to remember, I want you to remember that complements are just certain parts of speech. Remember we talked about the parts of speech of subjects, nouns, and pronouns? Complements, the same thing. Complements can be nouns, pronouns, or adjectives. And take a look at the ones we've got here. Tire is a complement following an action verb, it's a noun. Table is a complement following the action verb set, and it's a noun. Captain is a complement following the linking verb was, and it's a noun. But complements can be pronouns as well as adjectives as well. So as I said before, complements follow the verb, and the kind of complement will depend upon the kind of verb. So the first one we're going to take a look at are complements that follow action verbs. The complements that follow action verbs are called objects. Objects follow action verbs. All right? Now, objects can be divided into 3 kinds. There are 3 types of objects. We have what we call a direct object that follows an action verb. We have an indirect object that follows the action verb. And also we have what we call the objective complement. So, objects follow action verbs, and that's what we call them. We have the direct object that will follow an action verb. We'll have an indirect object that will follow an action verb, and the objective complement that will follow action verb. So that takes up 3 of the 5. The other 2 will be following the linking verb. And as I said before, complements can be nouns, pronouns, or adjectives. Doesn't matter which kind. Any of the 5, those are the parts of speech that they can be. These complements complete the meaning started by the subject and its verb. So let's take a look at these objects: indirect object, direct object, and objective complements. And the best way to take a look at them is by looking at them in sentences and how they're used. So keep in mind what complements are, especially the parts of speech. Keep in mind they follow the verb. All right, so we're looking at action verbs, and we're looking at complements that follow action verbs. All right, sentence number 1. Jim hit the ball. Now, while I'm putting the next sentence on the board, take a look at that sentence and find the verb, find the subject, and find what the complement would be that completes the meaning started by the subject and the verb. He dug a hole. Let's look at our examples. Jim hit the ball. All right, let's follow what we learned from before. Always find the verb and the subject. What's the action of the sentence? Hit. Who or what hit? Jim is performing the action. So Jim is our subject. Subject and verb. Jim hit what? Ball. Ball is our direct object. It's receiving the action, hit. So ball is the direct object. So we're going to be doing the direct object. Those 3 words will make sense together. Jim hit ball. All right, number 2, he dug a hole. Well, what's the verb? Dug is the verb. Who or what dug? He. He is the subject. He dug whom or what? Hole. Hole is the direct object. It's receiving the action of the verb. Number 3, Susan sketched a picture of a horse. What is the verb? What is the action? Sketched is the verb. Who or what sketched? Subject, Susan. Susan did the action. Susan sketched what? Picture. Susan sketched picture. Be careful of a horse. Of is a prepositional phrase. A direct object, complements are not found in prepositional phrases. So keep that in mind. Watch again for prepositional phrases. You have to watch out for them when they're in the subject, because the subject is never found in a prepositional phrase. A direct object is not found in a prepositional phrase either. Those 3 words will make sense together. Susan sketched picture. Number 4, commit thy works unto the Lord, Proverbs 16:3. What is the verb? Commit. Who or what commit? The subject is you, understood. This is a request or a command. So the subject you is understood. You commit whom or what? Works. Works is the direct object. It's receiving the action of commit. You commit thy works. Again, watch out for the prepositional phrase Unto is a preposition. So that's a prepositional phrase, and a direct object is never found in a prepositional phrase. So to help you with the direct object, find the verb, the action verb, because direct objects follow action verbs. Find the verb, find the subject, and then ask yourself, whom or what? Jim hit, whom or what? Ball. He dug, whom or what? Hole. Susan sketched, whom or what? Picture. You commit, whom or what? Works. So direct objects follow action verbs. Direct objects receive the action of the verb that the subject is doing. All right? Now, let's continue on with the indirect object. The indirect object tells to whom or for whom, or to what or for what the action of the verb is done. And let's just take a look at an example. I'm going to leave those sentences up because I want to compare the direct object and the indirect object sentences. So we'll just continue on. Number 5. We gave God the glory. Another one. The teacher gave Emily an award. And one more. The missionary's wife told the children a Bible story. Missionary's wife told the children a Bible story. All right. Again, direct objects follow action verbs. Indirect objects also follow action verbs. Just like before, find the verb, find the subject. Number 5, we gave God the glory. What's the action verb? Gave. Who or what gave? We gave. We is the subject. Now, be careful. Let's find the direct object first. We gave whom or what? We gave glory. Glory is the direct object. Indirect object answers the question, to whom, for whom, to what, for what. We gave to whom? God. God is what we call the indirect object. Indirect objects answer to whom, for whom, after the action verb, or to what, or for what, or for whom. All right, number 6, the teacher gave Emily an award. Again, gave is the verb, the action. Who gave? Teacher. Subject. Teacher gave what? Let's find the direct object first. Teacher gave what? Award. Award is the direct object. Teacher gave to whom or for whom? Teacher gave to whom? Emily. Emily is the indirect object. Just take note of the location, action verb, indirect object, direct object. Action verb, indirect object, direct object. Number 7, the missionary's wife told the children a Bible story. What is the action verb? Told. Whom or what told? Wife. Wife is the subject. Wife is a noun. Told what? Told whom? Told what? Told story. Story is your direct object, and it's a noun. Told to whom? The children. The children is your indirect object. Again, notice the location. Action verb, indirect object, direct object. Your direct object, you can have a sentence without an indirect object. You don't always have to have an indirect object. These sentences are complete and they just have a direct object. These sentences have indirect objects, they're complete thoughts. But notice the location. Whenever you do have an indirect object following an action verb, it will always come between. It will always follow the verb and come between the direct object and the verb. That will be the order. Verb, indirect object, direct object. Verb, indirect object, direct object. So objects, the direct object, the indirect object, follow action verbs. They are completers. They complete the meaning started by the subject and its verb. Now, keep in mind the location. It will always follow, immediately follow, the action verb. And the indirect object will always follow the action verb, and then the direct object will follow it. Let's take a look at another example. Keep in mind, objects complete the meaning started by the subject and its verb. Let's look at one more sentence. What is the verb? They gave him vinegar to drink mingled with gall. Action verb gave. Who or what gave? They gave. They is the subject. They gave whom or what? They gave vinegar, direct object. And it's a noun. They gave to whom or for whom? Him. Whoops, that should be indirect object. Again, notice the location. They gave him vinegar. Now, be careful to drink mingled with gall. That's just added extra. That's other sentence parts to help make the sentence interesting. But the basic sentence parts are they gave him vinegar. You can even put a period there and still have a complete thought. It would be a sentence. All right, so we've got direct objects, indirect objects. They follow action verbs. You can have a sentence with direct objects. Not all sentences will have an indirect object. But have you noticed in the ones we've looked at, if you have an indirect object, there must be a direct object. They must be passing the action on to something or someone, and then for what, or for who, or to what, or to whom. So you have to have a direct object before you can have an indirect object. You can't just have an indirect object all by itself with the action verb and the subject. They go together, indirect objects and direct objects. And those follow action verbs. Now, the other type of object that follows an action verb, and it's an additional complement, and it's called, if you remember from the board before, it's called an objective complement. And that is another kind of complement that follows an action verb. Now, with the objective complement, it's an additional complement that follows a direct object. Now, when the objective complement follows a direct object, we go back and take a look at the verb. And the verbs in those kind of sentences are usually verbs that have the meaning to make or to consider. Because the objective complement explains or renames the direct object. And again, it can be a noun, it can be a pronoun, or it can be an adjective. Let's take a look at some examples to explain what I mean. Keep in mind, as I write the sentences on the board, to find the verbs, because we always need to start with the verb. Number 1, we made Scott treasurer. Number 2, and that one is made. Remember, it means to make or to consider the verb. We consider him dependable. Number 3, most people consider themselves unworthy of Christ's love. And fourthly, the accident left him crippled. All right, objective complements are complements that follow an action verb. The objective complement will follow a direct object. The objective complement will either rename or describe that direct object. Objective complements follow verbs that mean to make or to consider. So let's take a look at the examples. Let's find the verb. We made Scott treasurer. We made. Made is the verb. We is the subject. We made whom or what? We made Scott. Scott is your direct object. All right, notice what's following it. Scott, treasurer. Treasurer and Scott are the same person. It's an objective complement because it's complementing Scott. So this is the OC, objective complement. We considered him dependable. What is the action? Consider. Who or what consider? We. Consider whom or what? Him. And I made a grammatical mistake here. Let me fix it. Him should not be capitalized, and I capitalized it. And the only time we capitalize him is when we are referring to the Lord. So let's fix it to a small h. We consider whom or what? Him. Him is a direct object. All right, him dependable. Dependable is the objective complement because it's identifying him and it's describing him. So it is the objective complement. And this one is the part of speech. It's an adjective. Whereas this objective complement was a noun and it's identifying it or explaining it. Now, one thing I want to put in at this point to help you with objective complements, and that is we can substitute to be, just mentally or work it in. We made Scott to be treasurer, and it makes sense. We consider him to be dependable. It makes sense. When you have an objective complement following the direct object, if you can just insert the phrase to be, and it makes sense, then you know you have an objective complement. Let's go on to number 3. Most people consider themselves unworthy of Christ's love. Action verb, consider. Who or what consider? People. That's the subject. Consider whom or what? Themselves. It's the direct object. Now, consider themselves to be unworthy. Unworthy is the objective complement. It's an adjective following the direct object, and it's describing it or explaining it. So, most people consider themselves unworthy of Christ's love. Again, there's that preposition of. We have a prepositional phrase, and direct objects, indirect objects, objective complements are never found in a prepositional phrase. That's its own unit. It acts as another function in the sentence. But your complements are not found in a prepositional phrase. All right, number 4. The accident left him crippled. Action verb, left. Who or what left? Accident, subject. Left him or left whom or what? Him is the direct object. Left him to be crippled. Crippled is your objective complement. And I know it's a verb form, but this verb form is acting as an adjective. All right, it's just adding to the direct object him, it's describing it. So those are objective complements. We can substitute make or consider because objective complements follow verbs that mean that. The accident made him crippled. So objective complements follow a direct object. Notice in those sentences that those are the only 2 complements that follow the action verb. You will not find an indirect object in here with objective complements. You have just the direct object, and then following that is your objective complement, and it will immediately follow your direct object. Immediately follow the direct object for your objective complement. So those are the 3 complements that follow action verbs. A direct object, an indirect object, and an objective complement. Now, if you take a look at your handout or your note, you'll notice after the examples that the objective complements follow other verbs. Now, the verbs mean to make or consider follow as I list the other verbs that can also take an objective complement. Make, consider, name, choose, elect, appoint, render, leave, think, find. And as I said before, if you can just put in that phrase, the infinitive to be, it'll fit in naturally between the direct object and the objective complements. All right, well, let's move on to the other 2 complements, and these complements follow the linking verb, and there are only 2 of them that follow the linking verb. So we'll take a look at those 2 next. The complements that follow linking verbs are called subject complements. And the reason they are called subject complements is because they refer to the subject. Either they are describing the subject or they are renaming or identifying the subject. The 2 subject complements are called predicate nominatives which are nouns or pronouns, or predicate adjectives, which are adjectives. Now, these two complements, called subject complements, follow linking verbs. So we have linking verb, we have subject complements. And they are predicate nominative or predicate adjectives. There are two of them. All right, and this will complete the 5 complements. All right, so we have linking verbs plus a subject complement. The subject complement is either a predicate nominative, which is a noun, or a predicate adjective. Number 1, Mr. Hurley is our coach. What's the linking verb? Is. And we'll label it as an LV. Who or what is? What's the subject? Well, Mr. Hurley is the subject. All right, let's take a look at the subject complement that's following. And it is a noun, and it's coach. Coach is, and I'll use the abbreviation, a PN. It's a predicate nominative. It is a noun. All right, now this predicate nominative is a subject complement because it's identifying Mr. Hurley. Coach and Mr. Hurley are the same people. All right, it's identifying who Mr. Hurley is. Number 2, her brother was a soldier in the army. Linking verb was LV. Who or what was? What is the subject? Brother is the subject, and only brother. Her is an adjective modifying brother. All right, what is the subject complement? What's following that's either a noun or an adjective or a pronoun that's identifying or describing the subject? Soldier. Soldier is the predicate nominative. It is the noun that is identifying brother. Brother and soldier are the same. Subject complement. It's complementing the subject. It's complementing the subject. It's a predicate nominative. Now, watch what remains. Subject complements are never found in a prepositional phrase, and that's what we have here. In is a preposition. This is a prepositional phrase, and they're never found in a prepositional phrase. Number 3, the plains are desolate. What is the verb? Linking verb are. Who or what are? Plains. Plains is the subject. Now, what is the subject complement that's complementing the subject? Desolate. Desolate's not naming. Desolate is describing, so therefore it's a predicate adjective. It's a PA. PA, predicate adjective, and it's describing plains. Canadian winters can be long. All right, what is the verb? Well, we have a verb phrase. We have a helping verb, and then the main verb, which is a linking verb. Can be is the verb, and it's the linking verb because you identify it by the main verb. All right, who or what can be? Well, winters. You might wonder about Canadian. Well, Canadian is a proper adjective, and it's describing winter. What kind of winters? Canadian winters. Now, what is the subject complement? What is the predicate nominative, or what is the predicate adjective that follows the linking verb? Long is not naming. Long is describing. We have a predicate adjective, and it's describing winters. So for your subject complements, you have predicate nominatives or predicate adjectives. They are subject complements because they are linked back to the subject either identifying it or describing it. Subject complements follow linking verbs. Am, is, are, was, were, be, being, being. And if you go back to your list of verbs, there are other verbs that can be linking verbs. Do you remember the sense verbs? Taste, feel, smell, sound, look, appear, become, seem, grow, remain, stay. Let's take a look at an example using one of the sense verbs. The joggers appear weary. What is the verb? What is the heart of the sentence? Appear. And it is a linking verb. All right, who or what appear? Joggers. Subject. Now, what is the subject complement? What word is either describing or identifying joggers? We have weary. It's a predicate adjective, and it's describing joggers. That's why it's a subject complement. It's linking back to the subject. This is a linking verb. Remember when we use the sense verbs, if you're not sure if it's an action verb or a sense verb, and substitute was or were. The joggers were weary. Were makes sense, therefore appear is used as a linking verb. So that's just one way to help you remember. So we have our 5 complements. We have direct objects, indirect objects, objective complement, and they follow the action verb. We have the subject complements that follow linking verbs, and there are 2 of them, the predicate nominative and the predicate adjective. Now, just like we have compound subjects, and you remember compound verbs, complements may also be compound. You can have 2 or more complements following an action verb or following a linking verb. So we're going to take a look at some examples showing compound parts for the complements. Let's look at some compound parts for subject complements and direct objects, indirect objects, and objective complements. Remember, whatever the sentence is, always find the verb and its subject first. God created the heaven and the earth. Created is the action verb, and I'm going to label it as an action verb just to help you remember the 2 different kinds of verbs and the kinds of complements that follow the 2 kinds of verbs. God is the subject. All right? God created. We know it's an action verb, so we need to ask whom or what. God created whom or what? Heaven and earth. It's answering the question whom or what, therefore it's direct objects. And we have a compound direct object joined by the conjunction and. Number 2, the quarterback threw John and Biz. The verb, action verb, threw. All right, who threw? Who's doing the action? Quarterback. Subject. Quarterback threw whom or what? Well, he didn't throw John Bill. He threw passes. Passes is the direct object. What kind of passes? Long passes. Long is an adjective modifying the direct object. Now, through to whom or for whom? John, Bill. John is an indirect object. Bill is an indirect object. So we have a compound indirect object. Number 3, malaria rendered the soldiers weak and helpless. The action verb, rendered. Who or what rendered? Malaria. Subject. All right, rendered whom or what? Rendered soldiers, passing the action on to soldiers. Soldiers is the direct object. Now, since soldiers is right after the verb, you know you don't have an indirect object. Remember I said indirect objects always immediately follow the action verb and that they come before the direct object? So let's see what additional complements we have. Rendered the soldiers to be weak, helpless. Weak, helpless are objective complements. They're complementing the direct object. It's an OC, objective complement, and an OC joined by and. And remember, we said we could put in the to be. Soldiers to be weak, helpless. Now, what part of speech is weak and helpless? Adjectives, they're describing. Weak, helpless is describing soldiers, but they are objective complements. All right, so those are our action verbs. Action verbs have direct objects, indirect objects, and objective complements. Those are those three. Now, let's go on to our linking verbs. Number 4, some early men of great faith were Job, Enoch, and Noah. What is the verb? Were. What kind of verb? Linking verb. All right, who or what were? What is the subject? Now be careful. Remember I said subjects are never found in prepositional phrases. Men is the subject of the sentence. Men were. Now, what is the subject complements? What complements are referring back to the subject that follows the linking verb? Job, we've got compound parts. Naming, these are nouns, so they're predicate nominatives. It's a PN. Enoch, a PN. Noah is a PN. And there's our conjunction, and. Number 5, the northern lights appeared vivid and eerie in the night sky. What is the verb? Appeared. All right, what kind of verb? Is it action or is it linking? Well, let's substitute was or were. The northern lights were vivid and eerie. It makes sense. Therefore, appeared in this sentence is a linking verb. What's the subject? Who or what appeared? Lights. Subject. Appeared vivid and eerie in the night sky. What complements that follow the linking verb are referring back to the subject? Vivid and eerie. What are they? Adjectives? Nouns? Are they describing? Are they renaming the subject? Vivid, eerie, those are adjectives. Therefore, they are PAs, predicate adjectives. Remember what I said earlier, you will not find a complement in a prepositional phrase. In the night sky, in is the preposition. In the night sky is the prepositional phrase. Complements are not found there. So that's just a basic overview of complements that follow verbs. Complements complete the meaning started by the subject and its verb. Complements can be single, complements can be compound, and usually joined by and, but not always, but usually. Now remember the two kinds of verbs. We have action verbs, and the complements that follow them are the direct object, the indirect object, or the objective complement. Then you have your linking verb. Plus, you'll have a predicate nominative, which is a noun or a pronoun, or you'll have a predicate adjective, which is an adjective that describes the subject. So those are complements, those are completers, and those are just another sentence part. You will find these, and let me ask you this, if we divide the sentence vertically between the subject and the predicate, where are complements found? They are a sentence part that's found in the predicate part of the sentence. Now, They may not always be there. Remember, we have sentences that can be inverted, and question sentences are inverted. But usually your complements are found after the verb, which makes them a part of the predicate, and they complete the meaning begun by the subject and its verb. All right, that summarizes that. So let's just take a look at a summary of the sentence parts. And what I want to do is just use the abbreviation for what makes up a sentence. All right, a sentence is a group of words that expresses a complete thought. We have the subject plus the verb, and you can have a short sentence. Jesus wept. That's just a subject and a verb, but it's a complete thought. All right, then you have subject plus verb plus direct object. All right, that's another sentence pattern. Then you have subject plus a verb plus you have an indirect object plus a direct object. All right, that's another sentence pattern. Then you have a subject plus a linking verb plus a predicate nominative. Then you have a subject plus a linking verb plus a predicate adjective. Got my letters backwards here. All right, and that's another sentence pattern. And one more that I forgot up here would be your, I should have put it up sooner, plus a verb, plus a direct object, plus your objective complement. And those are the sentence patterns, all right, that make up a good sentence. Before we close the lesson, let's just take a look at just a couple more sentence examples, just to make sure you understand the complements. In the sentences on the board, let's go through our basic format, finding the verb, finding the subject, finding the complement, and then identifying the complement according to the type of verb and how it's used in the sentence. Some mosquitoes give humans malaria. Verb, give. What kind? Action. Who or what gives? Mosquitoes is the subject. All right? Mosquitoes give whom or what? Mosquitoes give malaria. It's an action verb. It answers whom or what? Direct object. Mosquitoes give to whom or for whom? Humans. Indirect object. Notice its location. Action verb, indirect object, and then direct object. Number 2, God made Joseph a great man in Egypt. Action verb, made. Who or what made? God. God is the subject. God made whom or what? Joseph. Joseph is the direct object. Now, notice a great man. Remember, we need to substitute God considered, God made. This contains an objective complement. It's an additional complement that's identifying or renaming the direct object. Joseph, to be a great man. God made Joseph to be. We can substitute to be, so it makes sense. Therefore, we have an objective complement. And man is the objective complement. It's renaming or just identifying Joseph. Number 3, Alexander the Great was a pupil of Aristotle. What is the verb? Linking verb, was. Who or what was? Well, the subject is a compound word. It's It's not a compound subject, but it's a compound word, a name, Alexander the Great. We have a linking verb, therefore we know it's either followed by a predicate nominative that renames the subject or a predicate adjective that describes the subject. Was a pupil. Pupil is a noun. It's a predicate nominative. We have an article in front of it, and articles usually come before nouns. Pupil and Alexander the Great are the same. It's just identifying it and renaming. Now, remember what I said about prepositional phrases. Of is a preposition. Of Aristotle is not the predicate nominative. Remember, subjects, complements are never found in prepositional phrases. So watch that. Be careful. Remember the prepositions and be able to pick out the phrases just so you can separate them from the basic sentence parts. So those are the basic sentence parts. Those words make sense together. Mosquitoes give humans malaria. God made Joseph man. Then a description, a great man. Alexander the Great was pupil. All right, so those words will make sense together in that basic sentence pattern. And that concludes that lesson, looking at the basic sentence parts. Your assignment will be similar to what we have been doing on the chalkboard, and that's just finding the verb, identifying the complements that follow the verb according to what kind the verb is.